Welcome back to Championship Week Video Notebook here at Hoops HD, day number 7, because I can read Sleeka's screen today.
It is.
I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, joined by John Sleeka, David Griggs, and from Bracketeer.org, Rocco Miller back with us again. Rocco, great to have you back.
Good to be back. Happy
All right.
Championship Week.
Yep.
Championship Week, and this is, this is 7 days. It's Championship Week. It's the end. It's over, right, David?
No, Championship Week, it's not like your normal weeks. It's a 14-week week or 14-day week.
Wait a second. I only got 7 days in a week on my calendar.
Well, that's not Championship Week.
What day comes after Sunday?
What? Monday too.
Well, now it's a bracket week if you follow CBS Sports.
Bracket week, okay. The championship fortnight, I think, is what we're calling it these days. But
that is money. Yeah, that's what we're calling it next year. The championship fortnight.
Our good friend Brian Black came up with that one on Twitter, so I got to give him credit for that. I didn't that one. Championship fortnight. But in this show, what we like to do is start with some news and notes, and then we'll go through all the action, preview tomorrow's games, look at our survival board, update the Grambling waiver status, lots of other fun stuff. But let's start with news and notes, and not too much outside of conference tournaments today, other than the Cincinnati-Wichita State game. But Rocco, real nice win by Cincinnati on the road, actually.
Yeah, that's a big win for Cincinnati, and I think it keeps them in the hunt for a number 2 seed if they can win the American Tournament next week. They're a team that has been impressive with the metrics, but didn't have as nice of a resume as some of the other teams around them on the seed list, so this really helps build that up. Maybe they can get another win over Wichita next week. We'll see how it plays out.
Right. David, not much else happened outside of conference terms, though, did we? I mean, Houston beating UConn, not too notable, I guess.
No. Beating UConn is becoming a pastime. I used to joke when Wichita was in the Missouri Valley up until a few years ago that them and Creighton, and this is a bitter rivalry, by the way, or was, they don't play anymore, had a road win exchange program because it seems like they won on each other's home courts and in turn enhanced both their resumes more than had they just each won at home. Here is Wichita and Cincinnati's, both resumes looking a lot nicer because they won on each other's floors. So nice arrangement they got there.
And it is kind of funny that had they split the reverse way, both their profiles would look a little weaker.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And then a program like Temple, you can pretty much turn out the lights, especially after starting in a 22-zip hole with Tulsa today.
Oh, Temple.
Yeah, well, Temple will be discussed probably one more time when they lose their first round game in a few days, and Thursday on the American.
Yeah.
Let's get to the games that are played today. Let's start with the championship game of the Big Ten tournament, being played a week early this year, as we've been discussing all week. And John, Michigan does it again, second year in a row. They've won 4 games in 4 days to take the Big Ten tournament title.
Yeah, it was certainly a better day for, Mo Wagner for starters, and they're going to end up, holding on to a pretty consistent lead throughout the game, and they'll probably be looking at a protected seed now after finally breaking through against Purdue.
Yeah, that's kind of funny, Rocco. This is a Michigan team that just the last few weeks was starting to creep up into maybe that 6 or 5 seed range. Suddenly with this conference tournament, I think they're at least a 4 seed. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm looking at them compared to Michigan State now, and I'm starting to like Michigan's profile a little bit more than Michigan State. They beat them twice away from Ann Arbor. They also added, they're up to 6 quadrant 1 wins, another protected seed win today against Purdue. The committee has a week to digest what happened in the Big Apple over this weekend instead of it just happening spur of the moment like it usually does. So I think all of those factors really help Michigan. The other part is the RPI is now inside the top 15 comfortably. I believe they're 13 if you look at Warren Nolan's site. So Wolverines went from a team that I was having a hard time even giving a 6 seed to about 9 days ago, and now I think they've got a real shot at getting up to a number 3.
Yeah, and David, Michigan has punched their ticket now. Purdue obviously still in. We think we're pretty confident Michigan State and Ohio State are there also. I guess let's ask. I hate to ask you, but is this a 4-bid Big Ten?
5.
Okay.
I mean, you got to look at what Nebraska. I mean, look at Nebraska's win during the regular season over Michigan. I mean, it just looks phenomenal now. I mean, how do you not take them?
But we're done discussing Penn State, aren't we? I hope.
Yeah. Had they beaten Purdue, it would have been interesting. But yeah, I think we can take Penn State off the board.
All right. Well, let's go to a few other games that played conference championships. And I think the game of the day, despite a double overtime game that we just saw go final, happened in the championship game of the Big South, among other things because the stakes were the NCAA tournament. But Radford, Liberty, raucous crowd there in Radford, both teams sending tons of fans to the game.
Yeah.
And Carly Jones at the buzzer hits the three-pointer. It was actually that last possession was a pretty lousy possession. I was like, they're not going to get a decent shot off. They didn't. It was a falling away, long-range three from about 5 or 6 feet beyond the arc. Went through the net.
Yeah. It was great to see an atmosphere like this. I mean, Radford, they're well supported, or generally well supported, but today the place was just rammed. A lot of Liberty fans there too. I don't know if the Big South does it this way, but the Patriot League does, and in a lot of FCS football playoffs have that are on campus sites. It's basically you get 2/3 of the tickets if you're the home team. The road team gets 1/3, and then they have till a certain date to sell what they can, and whatever they don't sell goes back. Liberty sold all of theirs clearly, and it looked like they may have bought more than that, as you observed. So it was just a fantastic atmosphere because one side rooting for Liberty, the other side rooting for Radford. It was quite a scene, and it was a great game. Technical difficulties before the half, that drove me crazy because it's just like, oh, are you kidding me? Get the game back on. But, they did, to ESPN's credit, get it fixed in the second half. And what a game and what a way to end. And Liberty, this one's going to sting a little bit, but you kind of feel for anybody but that, to see their season end. But a real good showing in this tournament, including an upset win to get Radford the home game over Asheville in the semis.
Another bid was given out in the Atlantic Sun. John Lindbergh on this game here, where at halftime Lipscomb had about a 300-point lead. It was over. I think I actually tweeted out that I don't think that Lipscomb had to score another point the rest of the game and they would win it. That's how bad they were destroying Gulf Coast. And a completely different game in the second half where Gulf Coast stormed back from 32-point deficit.
Got it down to 4, didn't they, at one point?
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw, a situation where it seemed like Matthews from Lipscomb almost single-handedly outscored Gulf Coast in the first half, and yet it was a good one, I think, for Gulf Coast, who almost outscored Lipscomb for the first 15 minutes of the second half. So we were getting quite a few graphics during the game that were comparing this to the 34-point comeback by Drexel earlier, and also had some shades of the 92 Buffalo Bills as far as just how quickly Gulf Coast was coming back, because it was down to a 6-point lead with 9 minutes to play. And it was also a technical by Lipscomb's head coach earlier in the second half that he couldn't really stop the run as effectively as he normally would because he didn't want to risk an ejection in a game like this. But
it wasn't as much that as the fact that his point guard got into foul difficulty. He was on the bench most of the second half, and Gulf Coast went high pressure. And once we got to the end of the game and they got their starting point guard back in there, I think that's when things calmed down, Rocco, though, and Lipscomb finally put him away.
Yeah, and I think it was sealed off with that Garrison Matthews one-handed off the glass 16-footer, which I think would kind of put Florida Gulf Coast to bed finally. But it was a hell of a rally. It was pretty cool to see them come back. We were really excited about this matchup. I think ever since the preseason Under the Radar show, this was our projected final. The tournament held true. We got the matchup, and Lipscomb, to their credit, that was their second win at Alico Arena this year, and they did it in flying colors by getting that 30-point lead in the first half and hanging on for a 12-point final. So it'll be a fun team to watch. They would score a lot of points, and Garrison Matthews is a real talent.
Yeah, and
I
their
think the
first
other
ever
little-
NCAA tournament bid for Lipscomb as well. So congrats to the Bison.
Yeah,
And I think the other irony here is Lipscomb's a team that can probably avoid Dayton, at least as far as the first four goes.
That's what I was going to ask. Do they get inside the first four? I think they do.
Yes, they do. They've got 2 wins. They got 2 wins over Belmont. They've got 2 wins at Florida Gulf Coast. There's going to be enough 16s below them. I think they'll get on to the 15, but worst case scenario, 16, one of the higher ones.
Yeah,
and
I
enjoy it. That's exciting stuff. 2 wins over Belmont in an NCAA tournament bid. Lipscomb's living well, and they got everybody back for next year. So
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Missouri Valley Conference also went to the championship game today. This one was pretty much a snoozer, though, as after a great tournament, almost every game in this tournament had been close and fun. And David, Loyola Chicago just did what they needed to do, just completely rolled Illinois State and got that first bid in 30 years.
Yeah. Nice win for them. Really exciting. Really showed themselves as being worthy of it today. After really having to sweat out Northern Iowa just a couple days ago in the quarterfinals. The Missouri Valley, one of our favorite conferences, one of our favorite tournaments, Arch Madness. The atmosphere is great. But having said that, have you noticed that seemingly for the last decade, the championship game has been an utter obliteration?
Yes. And then the other factor of that, too, is if you've been following Illinois State this season, that was their 10th loss by double figures, and most of those are by 20-plus. This was only 16, so they actually held it tight. So when the Redbirds lose, they lose big.
Yeah.
But congrats to Loyola. It's nice to see a team that might have gotten some talk for the bubble had they lost this game, just do what they need to do and get in and take it completely out of the committee's hands, because this is going to be a good team. This is a dangerous team to win at least one game in the tournament, I think.
I think so, too.
No question.
Patriot League, it was semifinal day here, and David, at our show last night, we said that we were going to have you and I both agreed that the top 2 seeds would win, and one game would be close, the other one would be a blowout. So we nailed it.
We nailed it, absolutely.
Now, we may have picked the games wrong.
We nailed it. Nailed it.
Bucknell just completely obliterated BU, but a real fun game, though, John, between Colgate and Holy Cross.
Yeah, it was reminiscent of the first game that was actually played at Holy Cross back in December, which was a little bit more nip and tuck, and it's actually going to be pretty close proximity, at least as far as Bucknell and Colgate go.
Okay, that championship game will be coming up Wednesday night, so we talk about that again a little bit more on Tuesday, but I don't see Colgate finding a way to beat Bucknell, although no. All right. Southern Conference was semifinal day today here, and Rocco, we saw after we saw Furman completely destroy Western Carolina, be the most impressive team out there yesterday. Today, they were probably the least impressive team as East Tennessee State rolled them.
Yeah, they came out flat. I was disappointed. Furman was my pick before the tournament started, and East Tennessee State they've really gotten refocused for this tournament. It looks like they didn't mess around with Chattanooga, and they got off to a great start today. So that's actually afforded them to preserve their players, get them some late rest and start mentally preparing for the next day. And when you got to win 3 games in 3 days, that's the big advantage. They'll be going up against a Greensboro team that had to sweat it out today. So we'll see how big of a difference that makes.
Furman missed, or I'm sorry, not Furman, but Wofford, who came in as just a 5 seed, losing their last 4 games. I mean, really kind of going off of a cliff after having a really good year prior to that. Had 3 open shots in the last 10 seconds, missed all 3 of them. That one's going to sting a while.
Yeah, it is. They were all close too.
Yeah.
Now, at least if you play for Wofford, you could still say, "Hey, we won at North Carolina this season." So I don't know.
Yeah.
That may be better than than almost anything else. But John, tomorrow night, Greensboro and East Tennessee State, the top two teams. This could be have a chance to be a hell of a game, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is going to be also the rematch of last year's StokeCon championship, and in some ways also similar to last year where Greensboro had won. Well, actually, last year Greensboro won both meetings. They did split them this year, so Spartan's definitely going to be looking for some revenge in this one.
I'm going with Greensboro. David?
I'm going with East Tennessee State.
Okay.
And
Rocco?
it should be a good game. Both teams are in somewhat close proximity. Hopefully, especially East Tennessee State, it's not far at all. I think it's less than an hour. Hopefully they jump into their cars and we get a fun atmosphere tomorrow.
Yeah, they're both close to Asheville, so I think the place should be packed, though. But Rocco, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'll go with the Bucks just because I think they're fresh. Greensboro's been grinding out games and they're hot, so it definitely could go either way. But I'll go with the Bucks.
All right. We also had semifinal day today in the Metro Atlantic, where St. Peter's had a nice lead fairly early on against Iona, but you can't ever count out Tim Cluse in the Metro Atlantic tournament, and he did it again. Iona for the 5 millionth year in a row playing in the Metro Atlantic Championship game, this time against Fairfield, who held off in-state rival Quinnipiac in the second game there, David.
Yeah, the second game was kind of exciting. And again, I guess you saw it took them forever to get the game started. Did you see that? I guess you all did. All the issues they had. It was so crazy in that building. The fire marshal showed up. They had to get the crowd under control. It was just too crowded. There was about 50 people at this game.
Actually, one of the fun facts I realized about Quinnipiac's leading scorer for this year, who had actually, I think, managed about 600 points this year, managed a grand total of 0 points last year. And it wasn't like he was just a bench warmer, but it actually appeared in a number of games for the Bobcats last year.
Well, Rocco, Iona Fairfield, last time they played earlier this season, it was a 103-100 game in overtime. This has a chance to be a ton of fun tomorrow also.
Yeah, I'm expecting it to be a real good game, and I think Tyler Nelson might be the best player in this conference. He's somebody we talked about in the preseason show, and he's been amazing in this tournament. And I think, a lot of people aren't realizing that Fairfield actually won 9 out of their last 11. The only 2 games they lost were on that tough swing through Buffalo area where they lost to both Niagara and Canisius. So, and the game that kicked that big streak off was that overtime win against Iona. Iona, they're the team that always finds a way to win this tournament, so it's really hard to pick against them. But this year, they were lucky to win today. I'm going to go with Fairfield. I'm going to regret it tomorrow, but I'll go with Fairfield.
I'm going with you. I like Sidney Johnson as a head coach there in Fairfield, and they were my preseason pick to win this tournament. They had a disappointing year, but have a chance to erase all of that, though. David, you going with Tim Cluse?
Yeah.
Okay.
And not Iona, just Tim Cluse.
Okay, just Tim Cluse. John, It was quarterfinal day today in the Colonial. 4 games there, where we saw only one game resulted in an upset, and actually the first 3 games were not overly exciting, although I guess Drexel hung on with Charleston for a while.
Yeah.
And it was the game that I thought wasn't going to be as likely as far as producing that upset, and that was what we thought would be a depleted Wilmington team compared to last year, but it was at their leading score, getting 37 points against the Pride earlier tonight. So they'll have.
I think that was a CAA tournament record, I think, also. Go ahead.
Yeah, but they'll have, a fighter's chance against Northeastern tomorrow night. But both Charleston and William and Mary should also be fresh for their first semifinal matchup as well.
Yeah, David, I think Northeastern's going to take care of Wilmington, but I think that William and Mary could have a shot at Charleston. Charleston was not nearly as sharp as I thought they would be at home today.
Yeah, they weren't in home. It wasn't their home court, but it was basically their home city. But yeah, not impressive at all by Charleston today. In fact, they actually had to come from behind. They were down by double digits, I think, or close to it in the second half. And I thought we were going to see it again, another 1 seed going down. But Northeastern, not just in this tournament, but in the latter part of the season, has been really impressive. And if the chalk holds, Charleston's going to have their hands full with a Northeastern team that's really playing well.
Rocco, who's your pick to win this out of these 4 teams?
I'll stick with Charleston.
Okay.
I like Charleston. I think they're a good overall team. I think today they might have overlooked Drexel, but I look for them to get back on track tomorrow. And I think the Northeastern UNCW game will be really maybe better than it looks on paper. The last 2 times they played, it went to overtime, and unfortunately for the Seahawks, they lost both of those. But could be revenge time tomorrow. We'll see.
All right. It was also, we saw the final 2 quarterfinals in the Horizon League today, which started off with the second of the top of the big 3 teams here. The top 3 teams: Northern Kentucky, Wright State, Illinois, Chicago. David, NKU lost last night. UIC went down today as Milwaukee just loves playing in Motor City Madness, no matter what they see.
If they could play every game in Detroit, they would be phenomenal. I mean, if Milwaukee wins this tournament and gets sent to Detroit to play against Michigan or whoever, I mean, they better watch out.
That might be the home court disadvantage rules there, even though it's not in Milwaukee. Yeah. The other game, though, Rocco, Oakland did get by IUPUI, setting up Cleveland State, Oakland in one semifinal, Wright State, Milwaukee in the other. What do you think we see tomorrow?
Yeah, well, I would expect the unexpected in at least one of these games. And I've been really disappointed with Oakland's consistency throughout the year. So, and Cleveland State got the day off. So, they're basically assuming the position of the 1 seed. I'm going to go with the Cleveland State, Wright State final.
Oh,
I could see that happening too. Oakland has tons of injury problems, disappointing, and they always fail in this tournament, even when they're healthy, though. John, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, let's not forget Milwaukee had also swept Wright State during the year. I don't know what it is about this matchup that causes the Raiders fits, but it's not inconceivable that Milwaukee and Cleveland State would actually facing each other for the title game.
Yeah, didn't Milwaukee also beat Iowa State this season, I think?
They beat Iowa State and also lost to a non-D1, so they're all
they didn't play the non-D1 team in Detroit. To be fair.
That's right. It was Concordia St. Paul.
Yeah.
Not related to the Concordia that plays Cal Baptist, a different Concordia.
Right.
Correct.
Rocco was also
forward to this one.
Summit League. We saw the second 2 quarterfinals here, where we saw first of all North Dakota State in a close one. Actually, both these games were looked like blowouts early, and then ended up being close at the end. North Dakota State getting by Fort Wayne, and then in a double overtime thriller, Denver gets by Oral Roberts.
That was a thriller, and we were waiting for that one to end before we kicked the show off tonight. But Denver probably going to be a little winded tomorrow. I don't think they're a bit – probably. Luckily, they get the late game, so maybe they'll have enough time to recover. But I think that first semifinal is going to be a really good one. These teams usually get after each other, especially when they play in Sioux Falls. I think this could be another one that comes down to the wire, like many of the games in Sioux Falls do. I'm still expecting an all South Dakota final, but there is an upset tomorrow. I'll say it's the North Dakota State upset over the Jackrabbits.
Yeah, David, I agree with him completely. How about you?
I think the chalk will hold. This is going to be fun. I realize that this whole tournament is typically fun. It seems like of the 7 games every year, 5 or 6 of them are very close, and we see more than one go into overtime. That's certainly been true the last couple of years. But this is going to be – I know that this conference is under the radar, but this tournament is very well supported. They're going to sell it out tomorrow. It's going to be raucous for both games. Because it's in South Dakota. 3 of the 4 Dakota schools are still in it. And it should just be a great atmosphere. I mean, we saw a great atmosphere really in the quarters and even in the quarterfinals yesterday.
The fourth Dakota school is not in this conference yet. They will be next year. All 3 Dakota schools that are in the summit are still alive here, by the way.
That's what I meant. The other schools in the Big South, who is also still alive. Just saying.
Yeah, and South Dakota, Brock, you just typed this over here, but they had a complete blowout win over Denver had a complete blowout win over South Dakota during the regular season.
They
Not
did.
that long ago.
Yeah, that was the last time they played. So, they'll have some confidence because of that.
And the best chance that Denver has, David, as we know, for a few years now, they no longer have Joe Scott as their head coach.
Yeah, big point of emphasis here. Joe Scott, not the head coach.
It's been a few years now, but he's still had so many disappointing teams there.
We got burnt. For those of you that are new to the show, year after year after year, Chad and I both were big on Denver. Get burned every single year.
We're back in action in the West Coast Conference. They don't play games on Sunday. They will be playing their semifinals tomorrow. Gonzaga is going to completely roll San Francisco. But how about the late game, Rocco? You think BYU might upset St. Mary's?
Yeah, I mean, St. Mary's wasn't playing well yesterday. Pepperdine was playing pretty inspired. I got to watch that entire game, and for their coach, Marty Wilson. I think St. Mary's got the wake-up call they needed. I really think they're in more danger than a lot of people think to make the tournament, and they really want to make sure they get that win tomorrow. Especially the way the bubble's shaping up and the way that we've got 3 or 4 leagues that are realistic for bid thieves. I think it's a huge game, and St. Mary's needs to get an early lead and take care of them so they can be fresh for Tuesday, which would really put all this to bed if they can just beat Gonzaga again.
Of course, John, if BYU does win the game, all bracketologists will be sweating out Tuesday night and having to potentially put BYU in a bracket unable to play on Sundays.
It's not the ultimate nightmare where you have to find a way to work BYU into a first 4 game, but I would also say
we've had to do that.
But I would also say don't sleep on San Francisco, because this is a team that's also beaten Nevada and St. Mary's earlier in this year. So they certainly, I think, are capable of knocking off Gonzaga, but whether they actually pull it off is another question.
Yep, BYU unable to play on Sundays. When I used to do bracket projections, I would, when BYU was in the field, they would literally be the first team I would put into the bracket just to make sure it worked, and I would build the rest of it around them.
I like that. Good.
We have 2 other conferences that are kicking things off tomorrow. Let's start with the Mid-American. We've got the 4 first-round games on campus sites tomorrow. Bowling Green at Central Michigan, Northern Illinois at Kent State, Ohio at Miami, Ohio, and Akron at Western Michigan. And Sleek, I got to start with you on that Ohio game. I think you might even be going there possibly.
I'm considering it. This would be round 3 of what they call the Battle of the Bricks, but OU had actually won both matchups, including the regular season finale that was played on Friday.
What an unfortunate name for a basketball rivalry. Battle of the Bricks.
But the thing is, there's a lot of parity in this league because everyone managed at least 6 wins in conference play, which is rather remarkable.
I love this tournament.
This should be a ton of fun here. And David, let me start with you. What do you let me start with you with tomorrow's games. Do you see any of the road teams pulling off an upset?
I could see Ohio taking down Miami, and I could actually see Akron going into Western Michigan and winning. But again, this is a conference, and there just wasn't anybody in there other than Buffalo that we spent a lot of time on, but it's a conference of great rivalries. You got the wagon wheel rivalry with Akron and Kent. You got the Western Michigan, Central Michigan is kind of heated. And really just all of them, Miami and Ohio. It's just a fun, real competitive league. The tournament is one hell of a showcase. Again, it's not at campus sites, but they put on a show up in Cleveland every year. And, the opening round, they've actually played that in Cleveland before. I guess not wanting to fork out, $150,000, $140,000 to rent an NBA arena for the opening round.
It's been campus sites for about 5 or 6 years now, at least, though. So.
Yeah, it has. So,
but unlike other sites, Cleveland does support the MEAC.
They do.
Let's talk about who's going to actually win this entire event because it's the first time we've taken a look at it. Rocco, Buffalo, Toledo, or somewhere else?
Yeah, good question. So, the interesting thing is Eastern Michigan's gone on a tear and won their last 6, including 2 against Toledo. They beat Toledo at home and at Toledo at the last game of the year. So I think this Eagle team is poised for a run. They come in confident. They only have one senior. I think, but I do think in the end, Buffalo's got the deepest roster, much like East Tennessee State has been able to do in the SoCon tournament. I think they're going to reset expectations and get refocused, and they're gonna figure out a way to get through these rounds and get to the dance. So I'll go Bulls.
I agree with you. I'm going to go Bulls over Eagles in the final there too, David.
Yeah, I was going to pick Eastern Michigan to make it interesting because of what he said, but I actually think it will be Buffalo.
John, you want to go somewhere than Buffalo?
It would have been tempting earlier in the year to get on the Ball State bandwagon, but I think Buffalo has overcome their toe stubs and are probably going to end up going for what I think would be the 3rd straight time.
Yeah.
Let's head over.
Check that. Not 3rd straight, but their 3rd overall appearance.
3rd overall, right. Last conference is going to be starting off tomorrow. We have the first two of the 5 first-round games in the MEAC tomorrow, starting at 6:30. We're going to have Delaware State against North Carolina A&T, and Maryland Eastern Shore against Norfolk State. So the 4:13 and the 5:12 games that I highlighted there are tomorrow night. But Rocco, let me start with you. First of all, do you see any upsets in those 2 games? But more importantly, what do you think about this tournament as a whole and who's going to win it?
Those 2 games, no. I think those are the 2 I feel the best about because I think Maryland Eastern Shore and Delaware State are 2 of the worst teams in Division I.
In history, yes.
Yeah. So I think Norfolk State and North Carolina A&T, it would be in their bst interest to just get blowouts and be fresh for the next round against each other.
They would actually have 2 days off though until that game on I think it's not till Wednesday. So whether or not they get blowouts, they should be okay.
True. Good point. But I think overall, it's, obviously the Savannah State story has been excellent. I'm sure David's going to touch on that. I like Bethune-Cookman for no other reason except for the fact I saw them play against the Huskies, Washington Huskies this year. And if they win the tournament, that just gives the Huskies another conference champion because they need all the help they can get to get in right now. So I'll go Bethune-Cookman. But it's a toss-up.
And David, there's a lot of neat storylines of this conference. So the 1 seed Hampton, this whole storyline of them leaving the MEAC, and the rest of the conference mad at them. The 2 seed Bethune-Cookman never been to the NCAA tournament before. The 3 seed Savannah State, only 1 more year left in D1. We've got to save them. We got
to save the Tigers. Yes.
The 4 seed, even North Carolina A&T, was one of the worst teams in D1 last year. Almost won our Centenary Award. So there are storylines up and down the conference here. But what do you think about it?
Well, I mean, the way this conference normally works, I think Maryland Eastern Shore is going to win this tournament.
I wouldn't be surprised if something like a Morgan State or North Carolina Central came out of nowhere just to steal. I mean, there was a 5-way tie heading into the final day of the season.
Right.
But I'm going to go with Hampton as my pick. I'm going to end up taking the 1 seed.
I'm taking the Tigers. Save the Tigers.
John, which way you take Owen?
Call me crazy, but I think Howard can actually knock off Hampton, at least as far as the quarterfinal round goes. So I think it would clear the way for the Savannah State Bethune-Cookman winner to reach the championship, which I probably would give an edge to Savannah State here.
Okay, so you just said that if Howard knocks off Hampton, the Savannah State Bethune-Cookman semifinal winner would make it to the championship game. I just want to
with the whole thing.
Ed with the whole thing. Okay, Ed with the whole thing. A little better. Okay. I guess that does finish all the games for tomorrow. We do want to discuss one other conference, though. Let me take this down here and then put the other conference up on the screen, though. David, we had a little bit of breaking news about Grambling. We have applied for the waiver, but we had a little problem last night when we found out that they were not in the SWAC tournament.
Yeah, and again, I thought, like, we submitted it online, didn't hear anything in the NCAA, so I just assumed that meant they were cleared. I mean, they would tell you if you weren't cleared, wouldn't they?
Well, we have figured it out. We've amended our filing. Here is the amended SWAC tournament field that will allow Grambling to play.
Oh, yeah.
It is Sunday, March 11th at 2 o'clock. The winner of the other 8 games will go head-to-head with Grambling for the automatic bid. Once the
that's an interesting bracket format they got there.
Yeah, well, it gives it favors the top seed. It gives them a bye to the
Yeah,
finals.
it does. It does. I mean, I think a lot of conferences should adopt this model. Really.
And who has the TV rights for this game again?
We do here at Hoops HD.
Well, yeah, we at Hoops HD are going to bid on those rights.
I guess let's move over to our survival board, though.
Yeah.
And there it is. Heading into play day, there were 250 teams left with a shot to win it all. And lots of different ways that teams are described on this board here. I guess, John, do you want to take a shot at explaining it today?
Well, the very first category is going to be champions, which are going to be bold in all caps, which means the committee must take these 5 teams that are on there so far, including the 4 auto bids that were handed out today. Second category is going to be for locks, which are teams that are going to make the field no matter what. So that would include teams like Clemson, Duke, Miami, North Carolina, Virginia, and Virginia Tech as far as the ACC goes. Teams that are in italics are going to be under consideration, where if they lose their next game, we're not necessarily going to take them off the board in the first wave of balloting, but we will consider their merits. But if you're in a regular font, that's a lose and you're screwed, aka Pittsburgh Panthers.
All right, and David, we do this as a service to the committee, so they know who is in, who's out, and who they should be considering.
Right. Yeah, we do this for the selection committee.
And what
the
I would
public
do is,
at large, but particularly for the selection committee.
and let's see what happened as a result of today's game. We had 250 teams with a shot. 250 teams with a shot to win it all. We are now down to 233 teams left with a chance to win it all.
Yep, and again, we're taking it away. We've taken over 100 off now. So
you see teams like Lipscomb and Radford, even Michigan there, locked in.
Yep.
But Michigan State, Ohio State, and Purdue all should be taken as well. And Rocco, we're going to let them talk about Nebraska and Penn State, although we don't think they really should.
Yeah.
Yeah, they shouldn't spend much time on that. Sorry, David.
Yeah.
I guess that's the survival board. David, are we done?
No, I got to get out of this bunker.
Okay. Rocco, you've been with us since I think our very first show here, or maybe our first 2 shows, but we have decided to start a trivia contest. And the way it works is this. We've had a panel.
Rocco's here because he's going to realize what a complete joke this is.
Well, David, what we have is a panel of experts that came up with trivia questions, and the answers have been sealed in envelopes. And we've said if David can correctly give the answer that's in the envelope, he will be let out of the puppet bunker. And I even allow him to have help from anybody else. So you and John can both help him with the answers to these questions. So, David, you ready for the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Panel of experts. Panel of experts.
Here's a little history one. John, this is up your alley as well. In 1985, what powerhouse basketball conference sent 3 teams to the Final Four?
Oh, that's just common knowledge. It was the Big East. And this was when the Big East was in its glory day, like all the rivalries. And that was the year Villanova beat Georgetown. St. John's was also ranked in the top 5 that whole year. Just this college basketball explosion in the final. And the Big East at the center of it all. That's clearly what it is. You can let me out now. It's an easy one.
Well, do you want to talk to John and Rocco about this? Make certain before we lock that answer in.
It's the Big East. Everybody knows it's the Big. Don't you guys know it's the Big East? Okay.
I've been watching the Championship Week notebooks, David, and based on some of the previous trivia questions, I'm going to guess the SWAC.
SWAC.
No,
but
the
David,
SWAC's never been to the Ren.
You're going with Big East, David.
Yeah.
My advice, David, is make sure you check that Chad made sure to specify it's the D1 NCAA tournament, because it could be the NIT.
It is the D1 NCAA tournament. But David, your answer was Big East, correct?
Yeah, that's the right answer.
All right, here we go. We're going to check the envelope, and the answer is Iona basketball head coach Tim Cluse.
What? Who are these panel of experts? That's not even a conference. That's a person. Panel of experts is just a bunch of morons. Where did you find these people?
Not only does Tim Cluse always win the Metro Atlantic tournament, he put 3 teams in I'm putting him in the Hall of Fame. Don't you think he should be in the Hall of Fame?
He's not maybe, but we're not even talking about that. We're talking about a basketball conference. That's not even the definition. He's just a person. He didn't even play in the Big East.
David, you're missing too many of these questions, so I think we should raise the stakes for tomorrow. If you miss another question, we're going to break out a Mr. Trollolo, or at least some other.
Who are these experts, Chad, that you're talking to? These people are morons.
Hoops HD experts. Let's go to any final thoughts for the night, though. And Rocco, let me start out with you.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the Ramblers. What a great job by them to finish off an incredible season, where I think now in games where Clayton Custer is on the floor, they're something like 24 or 25-1. And if you look at the RPI, which is clearly a big factor that the committee looked at, you refresh the latest rankings, they're up to number 26. If they stay in this range and they have that win at Florida, and I think they have another 3 or 4 in the quadrant 2 range, I think it's realistic to believe that they're probably an 11 seed today, but with some help, and we'll see how the other conference tournaments go, they could get up to that 10 line. And no matter where they fall, they're a certain Sweet 16 caliber team that I don't think anybody wants to be matched up with. So congrats to the Ramblers.
Congrats to the Ramblers. And maybe I'll just throw my final thought here, John, before I head over to you. I think we saw another team play today that is beyond Sweet 16 potential. This Michigan team is playing so good right now. And what they did today and just handled Purdue the whole game there, I think this is a Final Four caliber team at this point. And we're going to see how this having the extra week off before the tournament plays out with Michigan, if it gets them rested or if they get a little cold there. But if they do come out strong like the way they played in this Big Ten tournament, this could be a very dangerous team in a couple of weeks. John, your thoughts?
Yep, it's time to pull up the screen share here because we had the NCAA Division II bracket revealed as far as the team of the people goes. So we go in the bottom right-hand corner. This will be the West region where Cal Baptist actually got the first at-large spot behind Western Oregon and Dixie State. So they're actually going to face a familiar foe in UC San Diego, who actually knocked them out in the second round last year. But as far as other teams in the Pac-West goes, they're also going to be well represented with conference champion Dixie State, along with Azusa Pacific and Point Loma also getting the final 2 at-large spots in this region.
Yeah, we'll keep updated. I believe that the Cal Baptist UC San Diego game will probably be coming up either Friday or Saturday this week. So we will let you know what happens with that and next week what's going on beyond that. But John,
the entire region will be played before Selection Sunday, I believe.
Yeah. David, your final thoughts?
Just again, the storyline with Loyola getting into the tournament for the first time since 1985, Lipscomb getting in for the first time ever. It's always fun to see those under the radar schools that it's either been a long drought or they've never been end up getting in. So fun day today seeing 2 teams like that.
Well, I guess on that note, I do want to thank everyone for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow with both a bracket rundown show as well as a video notebook. But on behalf of John Salika, Rocco Miller, check him out at bracketeer.org. David Griggs, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.